G'day, guys. Welcome to Superchargers. I'm Daniel Thomas, and my guest on this episode is USA memory champion John Graham. John is a Grandmaster of Memory. He's also an entrepreneur and has experienced decades of anxiety. He now draws from all his experiences to help people release anxiety and panic. We go pretty deep on this stuff, and John offers some awesome, actionable insights. Enjoy this one, guys. Let's go. Just to share a little bit of my own experience with anxiety, because I'm just really interested at how you've learned to manage it or overcome it, however you kind of refer to it. But for me, it hit me sort of by surprise in my 20s, and it sort of crept up on me. It almost snuck up on me, but not only did it sneak up on me, it kind of stopped me in my tracks because I was, I had a progressing career. I was very social. I was doing all sorts of stuff, but I was so busy and kind of keeping myself so busy to avoid dealing with a whole heap of stuff that eventually, when the anxiety kicked, I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to leave the house. So my experience initially of it was that it kind of snuck up on me and then just sort of stopped me in on my way. Obviously, there was a long journey after that to address it. But I was really interested in what I've read of you in that, you're saying there's a lot of traditional approaches to it that aren't necessarily the most beneficial. So how did anxiety look for you, and where did it begin?
I love you said that. It crept up on you and then it stopped you in your tracks. And that's the same with me.
Mm.
I probably had it starting when I was 13 years old. I can trace back a rough time in my life where I changed schools. I had a chest surgery. I was getting slightly bullied. I couldn't do things at school that others could, and I was getting eyes on me, and I was insecure about it. But it did creep up. It manifested in different forms over the years, where it was brain fog. I woke up one day training for the World Memory Championships, or not one day, but there was a summer where I was training. I was excited. I knew I was top in the world, and I couldn't train because I had so much brain fog. And I thought, oh, brain fog is just need a supplement. You just need to take a walk, and no, it wasn't go away. And it even got worse to periods where I would just like mentally freeze up. I'm starting a business, I'm training my memory, I'm going for it in life. And I would just like freeze up. Like my head was hot. I couldn't think what to do. I so overwhelmed mentally, emotionally. And it got to the point where it was manifesting into, I was having multiple panic attacks a day, just debilitating. In my room, not wanting to go out, terrified, thought I was going to die, thought something was seriously wrong with me. And yeah, the traditional methods of it's labeled as mental health. And that's the first sort of misdirect that, most people try to treat it through their mind, with supplements, with meditations, guided meditations, breath work, hypnosis, therapy, talk therapy, even all these different cognitive therapies, and they fall short. I knew all the mental tools at that point. I was a three-time, I'm a three-time U.S. memory champion. I knew all the mental tools. I had the best mindset coaches in the world, like Tony Robbins coaches. Like I had all that mind stuff. I was elite in the mind, but it was actually getting worse. And so a big part of my story is that some people just kind of maintain and cope with that. Like they try the medications or some approach to manage it. And I intuitively thought, I want to go deeper. Like I want this gone forever. Like, show me what I got to do. And I just kept refusing the moments of settling. Oh, just take this medication. Oh, just do this every day. Oh, just do an affirmation. Oh, just whatever. Just kept going deeper. And I realized very profoundly that this is an emotional root issue, not mental. And that was the moment that changed my life.
Yeah, that's huge. It's like you say, we both sound like pretty ambitious young guys, and to kind of bow out and hide in the room it sounds like it was not the way, it wasn't your approach to life. You were taking life by the kind of balls. Same deal for me.
Yeah.
um and yeah, yeah, it resonates, this kind of over intellectualizing of it, as opposed to getting to the underlying source of it. And like you, I was similar. I was like, no matter how hard I'm struggling, not to discredit medication, but for me personally, I was like, no matter how hard I'm struggling, I need to find my way through this. And exactly what you say, it's, what is it? It's trying to tell me something, I think, was my realization. What's it trying to tell me? But that's
Mhm.
so hard to realize when you're caught in the storm of it,
Yeah.
to take a step back and say, what is this trying to tell me? And it sounds like it was the same with you, and you had this determination to it's hard to kind of word it, not to defeat it, but to get to the source of it so that it didn't impact
Yeah.
your life.
Well, us, the personalities we have are grab life by the balls and achieve, right? Accomplish. And that even traces back to an emotional root issue of childhood, right? Or wherever in our life, where the way we seek love and connection is through approval, through achievement. It's no different, and if I'm being completely honest, than overeating or alcoholism. Like it's an addiction of achievement and being busy, right? Like you said, you were so busy, always feeling like you had to do something that you were distracting yourself from yourself. And I was too. And we're conditioned that way because in society now they want you to they all the mainstream, like, Tony Robbins, Joe Dispenza, they want you to like pump up your emotional state or mental state to a peak level so that you can achieve more, right? Because the first moment you notice a suffering or an anxiety, our mind labels that as bad and unwanted because it's awful feeling. And
Mm.
so we push it away and we try to listen to a podcast, do something motivational, like, and every time we do that, it stays inside of, we literally pushing it back down inside of us. Because what I realized is that every moment of our life that we've ever pushed away like that we couldn't handle, that voltage, that emotion, that awful feeling, that resistance, every moment we've ever pushed that away, it's still inside of us. If we didn't allow it to fully process, and there's suppressed emotions inside. And so we're kind of conditioned this way as achievers, like always be in a high vibe state, think positive thoughts all the time. So anytime something quote unquote negative happens, we avoid it or we push it away. And that is the problem. That right there is the issue, is it just pushes and pushes and pushes before you know it. Like you said, it crept up on you because you kept stacking,
Mm.
pushing and that pressure cooker got so intense that, it stopped you in your tracks, just like me. It got so intense that it all came out at once. And it forced you to ask, what is this trying to tell me? Because it's clearly very strong.
It's a friction. It's like a, yeah, friction, a build up. As you say, it's got to
Mhm.
go somewhere. And if it's just packed down, no amount of intellectualizing is gonna kind of address that. Um, yeah, and like you say with the thoughts, I had fear of the panic attacks, which created more panic attacks.
Yes.
And that was
Yeah.
all intellectual. It was like, I'm so scared of having a panic attack. I think I'm going to have a panic attack. It was just perpetuating itself. And that wasn't getting to the underlying thing. So what were the things that helped you get to the emotional aspect?
Yeah. Well, one, realizing it's an emotional root issue is all, I think that's the huge, now you can take a different path in life, right? For everyone listening, oh my gosh, it opens a door. It opens a new dimension, just that thought alone. And so realizing we all have suppressed emotions, I wanted to access those suppressed emotions. I wanted them all gone. And and I'm a believer, and I know this to be true, that when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? And the same thing happened in my life. When I started realizing there was a deeper truth, all of a sudden I could see it in the world. The right person showed up. And that right person for me was Michael Singer. He's an author of The Untethered Soul. His books are great, but I saw him in person 3 times. And he talks about these suppressed emotions, these samskaras, and how to release them. Like he went into it gently that the way you release these is to feel them and relax your body. Let them happen, which is completely counterintuitive to what we're doing. When the moment, think of the last time you were anxious or frustrated, any negative emotion. What did you do in that moment? And you probably did something to avoid it. You grabbed your phone, grabbed some coffee, went for a walk, podcast, exercise, Netflix, whatever. And that's okay, not judging that, but that's complete bypassing. And so in those moments, I started devoting myself to being with that feeling, as awful as it was. And it sounds simple, but it's incredibly hard if you've conditioned your mind your whole life to avoid that feeling, because your mind will go berserk and it will tell you all kinds of stuff to get you to escape that feeling and to live in your head. And so that's the first start, is just starting to feel that emotion and realizing that's another moment where I realized my mind is just absolutely neurotic. And Michael Singer also talked about that we all have neurotic minds. It's not you. It's a condition, it's an ego, it's a framework, right? Where we identify as our thoughts. We're like, that's me. That's me thinking that. No, it's not. It's a construct of understanding that mostly the first 7 years of your life, from 0 to 7, as a child, you're in a theta brainwave, which means you're a sponge to try to process this world and form a framework for understanding it. And so everything your parents tell you, teachers, society, everything you hear kind of oozes in and forms a structure. And it becomes the voice in your head to protect you from, don't do that, be careful. Like if your parents were like, stop doing that, don't do that, don't do that, always saying stop, that's the voice you're going to have as a 37-year-old adult. And it's a structure to protect you. But understanding that that is not you, that that's a structure, that's an ego construct, also helps. Where you can, instead of like listening to it all the time and obeying it, you can separate yourself and have a little buffer and just witness that neuroses, And so those are the first steps I started taking. And it was incredibly tough because I was going through panic attacks every day in that phase, but I knew that was the way out, and I just kept devoting myself to that.
So it was about sitting in the discomfort and getting that initial awareness, and then challenging yourself to sit in the discomfort of things that come up, and be cool with them, and let them
Yeah.
do what they need to. What about the stuff from the past? Because that's cool, like moving forward, but there's also those layers from the past.
So 2 things I'll say about that. One is you are releasing the past anytime anxiety comes up. Because if going back to those days where I was waking up, I would wake up feeling dread and heavy and overwhelmed with my to-do list of what to do, right? Every day. If that's you or someone out there, you're not dreading the anxiety has nothing to do with your to-do list or your finances or your relationships. Those are poking the suppressed emotions inside of you from the past. So if I'm waking up with anxiety, that feeling is something that wants to go from the past. It wants to be experienced and seen. So it is the past coming up, haunting you. It's just we think it's because of our to-do list or whatever we're blaming it on. No, it has nothing to do with that. Those things are poking you. So to release the past is to be in the present moment with whatever uncomfortable stuff, because being in the present moment doesn't mean everything's sunshine and rainbows and gold. And being in the present moment means you're with whatever is present. And if whatever is present is anxiety, it's from the past. And so just being with that and allowing it to process, you'll clear it and you'll release it for good, like forever, those parts. And over time, it just keeps releasing. But talking about the past, I also discovered a way to access those boulders of the past. Like, because I was impatient and I wanted it all gone. I wanted to just like
Mm.
sit down one day and just release it
Just
all,
clear
right?
it.
Yeah. But I figured out a way to do that. Not in one day, like that's impossible. But over time, accessing those memories of the past that you know are haunting you, the breakups, the betrayals, the deaths, whatever, the awful things you've experienced in your life, you know what those are. You can sit with those too, and not through the mind, but being in that feeling, allow it to release and the part that I'll mention too is you have to understand what you're attached to. Meaning, I'll give one of the most common attachments is being attached to being right. We are attached to being right. That's why we get so angry at politics, because I'm right. I know what to do. Like they're stupid, they're wrong, right? We hold on to this judgment of being right, wanting to be right. And because we hold on to that, we suffer and we get angry. But it's the same thing with the stuff in the past. If you can know what you're attached to, you have to feel that emotion, but you also have to let go and understand how to let go of that needing to be right so that you're not affected by that moving forward. Because if you don't release that attachment, you're going to continue to feel that suffering, forever.
The clinging on to things.
Yeah.
That's a really cool reframe, actually. The kind of past is the present, so clear it in the present, and it also helps clear the past. And not to throw too many metaphors, but I sort of thought of it as like the muddy waters of the past. But you're right, if you're like letting that, call it water or friction or whatever, out, it's helping clear that past stuff too. I had a really beneficial experience, which was probably in my early 20s with EMDR, which is the rapid eye movement stuff.
Mhm.
That I actually found helpful in releasing. I like that you call them boulders. That actually helped me release a past boulder. That was one of the more effective
Mhm.
techniques I experienced. I don't know if you've experienced that yourself.
I've heard of it, and I know
Mm.
I'm very familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of therapy based, but it was, focusing on the eyes, and it brought some stuff up. I really felt it. So,
Mhm.
I mean, there's so many different approaches and things, but yeah, this attachment, um, yeah, it's the clinging on to, like you say, the clinging on to this belief, that like holding on so tightly to a belief. So I guess the counter to that is being open without judgment, and being willing to listen, and being willing to acknowledge that, you know to be like, how do you address that attachment thing?
Yeah, you have to, in order to release an attachment, you have to be aware of it, because those are all, everything you're holding on to is unconscious, or it can be conscious. It's just you're still holding on to it. So you have to be aware of, oh my gosh, you have to have clarity of, I'm holding on to being right. I, like in a breakup, I'm holding on to an argument that I was right, that what they did is wrong, and I'm going to hold on to that. So just knowing that, just being aware of that gives you a choice. But so many of us, and there's more attachments than the just being right. I go over this with my clients, and because if you can expose all the reasons you're attached and intermingled with all these emotions, now you have a clear choice to let them go. And like that's powerful because you're bringing everything up from the subconscious, unconscious, and like exposing it. Like one of my very recent clients, she's in Israel, and she messaged me. She was so overwhelmed. Like when I gave her a simple exercise. I told her, list everything that bothers you. Like go today and just everything that bothers you, write it down. Every little thing, every big thing. And she was so overwhelmed. She's like, oh my gosh, she's like, I'm attached
Bothered
to everything.
by.
I'm so bothered by everything. And she
Yeah.
didn't know that. And
Mm.
I would wager everyone listening is the same way because I was too. That moment shatters you because you're like, I have been so reactive my whole life and I'm reactive right now that now everything subconscious comes to the forefront and you can look at it. And it's like a shocking moment. But it's the moment, it's like in the Matrix where you take the red pill and you choose truth, and it exposes you to the truth so that you can change it and become better.
Yeah, at the peak of my anxiety, I was just reactionary to everything, and I had to get that awareness. I was just operating on pure reactivity, just
Yep.
in a spin of reacting to all the noise. Um, so many things on this show have come back to awareness. It always comes back to awareness as like a big perspective as well, like how your perspective on things shift.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating that you were you were interested in kind of conquering the mind in a way, in terms, especially with memory. And I'm wondering about the connection between
Mm.
um this, call it the study of the memory, and the anxiety. Is there a connection there at all?
Sure. I mean, like I said, I like you wanted to attain success, achievement, award, credential, be a little famous, all the things. That stems from, some of those childhood things or some early things. And because of that, 10 years ago, I read a book called Moonwalking with Einstein. And the subtitle, this is where it got me into memory, The Art and Science of Remembering Everything. And I was 27 years old. I didn't have a photographic memory, and I'm not a genius by default. I had to learn this stuff. And that book changed me because that gave me a portal to attainment and achievement. I thought the mind was going to help me achieve everything I wanted in life, because there's NLP, there's all kinds of mind flips and type of stuff to pump you up and be sharp in the mind. And that was my route. So I learned memory, and memory, think of it like I learned techniques to acquire so much information, massive amounts of information. I was thinking about this the other day. Like, people really think the Jeopardy contestants, like the top Jeopardy people, are so smart and so cool. But to me, I'm like, after I've been through memory, I'm like, no, that's just an acclamation of facts. Like, there's no wisdom in that. And so 10 years ago, the me wanted all the stuff crammed into my mind. I wanted to know everything, be everything, have everything, attainment. And that's the anxiety. That's like needing it all to be okay, needing it all to be somebody, needing it all to feel a connection. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want to like blast that, because it's a journey. You have to understand yourself over time. And so the me now is like, I actually retired from memory competitions very recently, like within the last week.
Oh,
Because,
really? Wow.
yeah, because I don't need another trophy. I don't want it. I don't need it. And I'm interested in other higher things now. But you can see, like, the anxious mind wanted everything to attain everything. And then once you start letting these attachments go and these needs for these feelings and awards and accomplishments, not that they're bad. Like, I see the trophies behind me. I love them. I like honor them and what they got me. But letting a lot of that stuff go frees you of this like hamster wheel mind of like always going, always productive, always let's get this. And it lets you relax more. And when you relax more, as you understand, things become easier the more you slow down.
Mm.
The creativity pours in, the opportunities pour in, you become a magnet once you're out of that anxious, hyper productive mind.
Yeah, it sounds so simple when we frame it, but it really, when you're in that spin and just trying to do more and more and more, it actually creates resistance. And like it's, and
100%.
but that's what you're trying to attain, like you say. And I love that you said retainment of information is different to wisdom. You
Yeah.
know, you can obviously gain wisdom from all the information that you retain, but yeah, it's a different thing. Um, and yeah, what does the idea of being, I mean, you've just said it, the idea of freedom to you. What is freedom to you?
Freedom from myself, freedom from meaning all the stuff I've held on to over the
Deta-
years,
detaching from that stuff.
attachments and emotions that I'm in, the conditioning of the mind that I've,
Yeah.
the reactivity that you mentioned, that's conditioning. It's just ingrained in us. And so freedom for me is not freedom of like being on a beach with $1 million, because if you're on a beach with $1 million and you're anxious, that's awful. right? And I know so many people who are millionaires, billionaires, who are depressed, who are anxious, who are like top athletes in this world. Some of the best athletes you know of are extremely anxious beings. I don't want to be that way. I don't want to have it all materially. Like, so freedom of me is inner freedom of releasing all the stuff that's in the way that's preventing me, like literally gumming me up and preventing me from feeling happy. Because another thing that's a truth is that wellspring, that spring of energy and happiness is inside of you, trying to happen at all times. But there's so much junk in the way, suppressed emotion conditioning that prevents us from accessing that. So, like, if you're trying to seek stuff like trophies and awards and money and stuff like externally, you're never going to actually feel fulfilled. It's a never ending game, and it won't happen, guaranteed. The happiness is releasing all the crap that's in the way of you feeling happy at any given moment. Because I can feel just as blissed out happy sitting, like looking at a forest than I could have winning a trophy. And people think that's crazy, but it's absolutely true.
That's an awesome thing. Yeah, it's not place. It's what's, it's so easy to think that all the external stuff is gonna create that sense of freedom. But if you have that inner sense of, call it peace, I believe you can be happy anywhere, even in some pretty grim
Yeah.
spaces or circumstances. So yeah, that's very cool. I know you've let go of the memory competitions now, but I do have a couple of questions about
Yeah,
the
go
retain,
for it.
because
Absolutely.
one, I'm wondering, do you think learning another language helps your memory?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I
Because
mean, you're learning a different perspective because different languages have different meanings and different flavors and perspectives too, meanings behind the phrases. So you make different connections. Absolutely.
that's what I'm saying, because I've been living here in Germany and struggling with German. But I think the struggle that goes with learning German, because it's just a very complex, I don't know if you speak it, but it's a very complex
Yeah.
language, and I've just struggled to really get it in. Spanish, I sort of picked up relatively easy in a short amount of time. German's quite difficult, but then there are times where I'm like, I think this is somehow connecting the like synapses or something that haven't, just by this linguistic, like you say, get understanding the kind of nuances of a language as
Yeah.
opposed to just the like nuts and bolts of it. Um,
Yeah.
is it a misconception that memory deteriorates over time?
No,
No, it does.
it does if you don't use it. Sure,
It's a
like
like a
anything, it atrophies. Yeah, it
like a
atrophies
muscle.
100%. And
Yeah.
if you don't use it and if you don't use it to the way it wants to, it will absolutely atrophy. And that's part of memory techniques is using what your brain wants in order to remember. Because most people don't understand that. The common way of memorizing something is to just look at it over and over and over and hoping it'll stick. Kind of boring, right? It's awful. Um, but the way the mind wants is using more of the right brain, the creative, the visualization, imagination and creating story,
Mhm.
um, and connecting it to things you already know. So instead of being abstract here, let's maybe do an example of a German. Is there a German phrase or a word that, and I'm putting you on the spot, that we
I
can,
like
but
it.
I can
I like
help
it.
you like learn this
Yeah, yeah.
language and
I
see
like it.
what I mean is there a word that you can think of maybe that we could utilize here?
One word that I struggle with, or one word that
Yeah, one word you want to learn that maybe you keep forgetting, or that we could use it as an example.
um okay, here's a good one. Geschwindigkeitsbegrenzung. That means speed limit.
Geschwindigkeit,
Geschwindigkeit,
Kite,
Geschwindigkeitsbegrenzung.
Geschwindigkeits. Okay, Begrenzel. Okay,
Begrenzung.
that's all quite a mouthful.
It is. It's like it's a ridiculous number of letters for speed limit. Yeah.
Yeah. So the way I would approach this is you're going to want to turn that word Geschwindigkeit, Begrenzel.
Yeah. Begrenzung. Yeah.
I love how you're breaking it down like
Mm.
syllable by syllable. This will help. Make a story out of that based on what it sounds like to you. right? So it means speed limit. You already know what speed limit means. You can visualize a speed limit sign or driving. Gush Vindicate, Gush Vin Dikite. I would imagine like there's the word kite in there, right? I can imagine a kite, right? Gush, and let's put you on the spot, Daniel. Gush, what does gush make you think of immediately? Gush.
Mm.
Sound like, rhyme like.
It's weird, but it's almost like a punch, maybe like a goosh or something.
Oh yeah, I love that. I love that. Yes. I love it because there's no right or wrong answer here. It's whatever comes to you. I want you to utilize that because I'm going to come up with something different. So,
Yeah, and also if it's weird, don't judge it, right? It is what it
yeah,
is. Like that's what came to me. So
yeah. So goosh, like you imagine a punch, like a goosh. Vindy, Vindy.
windy, wind and a kite.
There you
So
go.
yeah.
So you're trying to punch this kite in the wind. Maybe you look at the speed limit and it's windy. There's a kite attached to it, and you're trying to punch it.
Mm,
That alone, just
mm.
how silly and stupid that is, makes a connection. Because now, when you're trying to remember speed limit, you can go to your mind to the speed limit sign, and you can remember, oh yeah, I'm trying to punch it. I'm angry at it, or whatever you want to story you want to connect to it. That's gonna make it stick much longer than like just trying to over and over and over say it.
That's awesome. That's really cool because, and I'm a very visual person, so that's so much more appealing and fun to me than trying to just look at the word and like you said, the mundane kind of aspect of looking at it. We did. My fiance actually did this with the I packed my trunk game. Because we used to play this in Australia where it's like I packed with this and this and this, and it goes around and you have to remember the 10 things before you. The
Mhm.
first time I played it with her, she was doing that. She'd created a story, and then
Yeah,
she could keep it going forever and ever and ever
forever,
and ever. So
forever.
if it was a ball in a car and a thing, she was, and I tried that and it worked.
Yeah.
But for me, do you have any tips like for getting text in when I've had to memorize a lot of text or dialogue? It's been quite tricky to get that in. So with those sentences, would you suggest again a visual exercise when it's purely just retaining text?
Yeah. Typically the visuals is like your last resort. It's not a last resort, but I don't go to it right away. Meaning if I'm looking at text or a chapter or something, I'm going to read through it naturally and try to be engaged in it. And at the end, I'm going to like close the chapter of the book and I'm going to look at the chair and try to teach the chair, reiterate what I just learned. Like spit it out verbally, not in your mind, spit it out verbally. In that process, that's called active recall. You're trying to actively recall it. And in that process, you will notice, oh my gosh, I remember that very clearly. I'm good. That was easy to remember. And you'll remember parts that are like partial there, like I forgot what it meant, like it's incomplete. And then there's parts where you'll blank. In that process, you get immediate feedback.
Mm.
I need to look at that again. I need to remember that one little connection, and that's good. That's powerful because otherwise we don't know what's in there and what's not if we just read it over and over. This is because it's called an illusion of competence. Like the moment you read a chapter, the moment you walk out of a lecture, it's an illusion that you believe that you have it all. You feel like, oh, I know it, I just read it, but you don't. So we quiz ourselves. In that quizzing, you notice the missing links and what's there. So now you can look at it again. And then if something is just not sticking, you can use a memory technique like a visual story, right?
Mm.
Um,
For the weaker spots
for the weak
or
ones,
the
yeah.
yeah
You don't want to use that story for every single thing. I mean, you
yeah
can, but it's
yeah
just unnecessary. So, um, yeah, that's a process, a natural process I would take. Another real quick thing I'll mention is utilizing keywords, meaning instead of trying to memorize sentences, full concepts, if you can remember one word, like reading a paragraph or a big thing and summarize that into one word,
mm.
And if you can remember that one word, it unpacks the rest of it in your mind, kind of like a cookie crumb, like a
The
breadcrumb.
key. It's a key
Hey,
to the whole thing.
yeah.
Yeah, cool. No, they're sound pieces of advice. I was just curious as to some of the techniques.
Yeah.
What are some of the non-negotiables for you on a daily basis? Are you a very regimented person in terms of how you block your time, or are you more spontaneous? Are there things that you kind of know you have to do in a day?
I used to be really crazy on rituals and habits. Again, when I thought the mind was the access to it all. So I used to do all kinds of crazy stuff, visualizations and all the stuff with the mind. I don't do that anymore. What I do, and the priority to me is and uh, to surrender. I don't call it a meditation because meditation's vague and people don't really agree on what that means because it's so many meanings. But I lay flat every day. I don't take a nap, but I lay flat and I completely let go of every muscle in my body and let go of my breath and let go of my mind, which is it's kind of advanced what I do. But in that process, I immerse myself in the feeling and the textures that are flowing through me. Because I'll say this, Daniel, when you start releasing all massive amounts of suppressed energy inside of you, you start clearing a lot of pathways in your nervous system. And I personally started feeling all this energy moving through me, which I thought spiritual people were crazy. Like I felt
Mm.
this energy moving. I'm like, whatever, but I started experiencing all this. Like I can feel energy all over me now, fingertips, heart, head. And so when I lay down, I relax everything. I immerse myself and I lean into whatever textures or feelings are happening. Because in that process, I'm releasing more. I'm integrating more parts of me that are suppressed. And so I make a habit of doing that every day for extended period of time. Again, to integrate and embody more lost parts of me, if that makes sense, just to enhance my potential.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, I love what you're saying about the clearing the pathways. And then again, if you're still caught on the kind of intellectualizing, if your body's feeling different, but you're actually progressing, you might judge that as like, oh no, something's going on. But actually it's clearing those pathways. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty cool. So the surrendering. And it goes back to what we were saying about just the less actually can kind of attract, call it
Well,
more.
it's deconditioning. It's reconditioning me out of the do because it's so powerful.
Mm,
To, like always feel like you got to be productive. It's awful, but it's consciously pulling yourself out of that conditioning, like that robotic reactive conditioning, which
mm.
will take you. It's limited how far that will take you.
You've mentioned a couple of books uh, that have had a significant impact. Are there any pieces of art, movies, or series, or anything that have had a significant impact on you, or that you just might have liked recently?
Interesting. Oh,
Or even earlier in life, like a film
okay.
that kind of, yeah.
That's really interesting. I've never been asked that question. Because a lot of stuff, I'm sure that there's been a lot of movies that impacted me early on, but it impacted a different version of me, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. Or even music. How important is music to you?
Yeah. I mean, I listen to it all the time. Certain tracks take me to a state,
Mm.
you know. So Hans Zimmer
Oh, yeah.
takes me to
Gladiator. Yeah.
places. He's, yeah. And here's the thing about, I've got a different view of art. Maybe not a different, it's not really groundbreaking, but all that stuff, creative music and film, it channels into the person. It's not coming from them. It's coming from
Mm.
someplace higher. Like truly. Like if anyone's here has had a thought, a creative burst while you're in the shower or on the bus or whatever, that's not coming from you. And it's coming from someplace higher. Let's just leave it at that. And so different, Hans Zimmer is one, different types of music capture my soul, and I can feel the height of those dimensions in that artwork. If I think you understand what I'm saying, where you feel it, that's what art is. It's to elicit a feeling and a connection, not something like intellectual. That's cool. I mean, you can, but it grabs your soul. And so the books that I mentioned, Moonwalking with Einstein, Untethered Soul, Hans Zimmer, they all grab my soul. I didn't have to think about and search for them. They smack you in the face when you're in certain points of your life. And so I may not have a good example of recently, but what smacks you in the face, but you don't have to search for things in life. Like if you get out of that mind of like you trying to figure out everything on your own, stuff will smack you in the face without you trying to do anything. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
that's very cool. No, I agree 100%. That's yeah, this idea of being a channel, allowing that to come through is sometimes that's the challenge. But no, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's a tradition on the show to have guests offer some kind of challenge to listeners. We've already suggested a few. You've already
Yeah.
suggested some awesome ones. The surrendering. I mean, there's many, but is there anything else that springs to mind that somebody could do on a daily basis? Perhaps.
And everyone listening has to write down everything that bothers them. Like take a notepad with you throughout the day, every little thing, and you will be shocked. Like I'm telling you all now, you will be shocked. Even if I did it to this day, there's still stuff that's your work. That's your work. That's offering higher dimensions to you because your suppressed emotions are your suppressed potential. So what I'm really trying to say is everything that bothers you is a portal to a higher potential. Like literally you can release something that's dense and packed up inside of you, release it and integrate it to expand. You don't expand through your mind by like forcing a belief and an affirmation. You're trying to play God with your mind. It's the same thing as like, I give this example because my wife just had a baby. We just had a baby. Like my wife
Congrats.
didn't make the baby. She ate food, she slept, and the baby was formed in her, which is so incredible. A divine intelligence did that. We don't have to beat our heart like manually. So why are we trying to do that with our mind? Why are we trying to shove stuff and manipulate our mind? We're trying to play God. There's a divine intelligence that if you let go, so I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but if you list what bothers you, though that list of every single thing is a portal, that if you can release that attachment and that feeling that's inside of you, you access a greater potential and you expand. And so the first step is awareness. List everything that bothers you. Now you can go at it on your own, listen to this podcast a few times, try to like give some structure of how to navigate that, or you can get help like navigating that too. But that's a challenge I would offer everyone.
Yeah, where can people find you and your work?
Yeah. I mentioned the program. It's at releasepanic.com. It's an 8-week process to have a fully regulated nervous system, to allow this stuff to come up, to unhook from negative emotions as they're happening. And then the last process to release the boulders without your mind, from the past. And I help people do that to access their greater potential, to release the suppressed emotions. So releasepanic.com. I'm also, if you want to just feel me out on a free guide and get started on your own, go to releasepanic.com/free to talk about this it's emotional, not mental, and what you can do to start. But I'm also active on Instagram. So you can follow me at memoryjohng. Happy to answer any emails or DMs too from people.
Cool.
Yeah.
So the release panic is a course, like people can do that globally.
They can do it globally. That was the client I mentioned in Israel. Yeah, she's learning to release this stuff of the mind. And yeah, it's an 8-week process. Anyone can jump in. You get modules every week that are guided, but then every week you're on a call with me where I can walk you through it deeper, because people run into roadblocks initially because the mind, people like everyone listening to this podcast, like, oh, this all makes sense. Like, I'm going to try this. But the moment you try it, your mind's going to go, like, it's going to be very hard. So I walk people through how to let go of that mind, to allow you access that stuff that's trying to come up. But yeah, I walk people through this. It's very powerful.
Thanks for tuning in. If you have a guest suggestion, please reach out on my website at danthomas.net. I am also on social media at Mr. Dan Thomas. Catch you on the next episode.